Well, Mother Nature, she's bound to start a revolution. This human condition stirring up so much pollution.
Here with Toby Hemenway, author of Gaia's Garden, North America's and actually I think the world's best-selling permaculture book. Toby's just come to Calgary to teach a 3-day course on the methods of design, basically the basics of permaculture, getting into some of the more advanced concepts, and we're delighted to be able to have a bit of a conversation with him today. So, welcome, Toby.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So can you tell me what your inspiration for Gaia's Garden was? Like, what really originally got you to write that book?
Yeah, just being totally fascinated by permaculture and really taken by it. But the books at that point on permaculture, most of the available written information was either the Permaculture Designer's Manual and other things by Bill Mollison, which are wonderful, incredible references, but they're very dense. They're not really reader-friendly. Or things from Britain, which were fairly readable, but they're from Britain. So there really wasn't any sort of North American permaculture book, and I spent a lot of time in an earlier career doing science, explaining science to lay people. So I kind of knew how to explain complex topics in a simple way, and it just seemed like writing a North American permaculture book that was going to be reader-friendly was the thing to do. So that was the inspiration, was to fill a niche that really was pretty big and open at that point.
Yeah, well, you've done a great job of it. It's a very, very clearly written book.
Well, thank you.
In the last 2 years, kind of following your career a little bit, I've noticed that you've taken more of a migratory approach to permaculture, and you're not necessarily staying in one spot, which I find really interesting because, depending on who you've taken your PDC from or kind of your philosophy on permaculture, some might argue that that's flies in the face of permaculture. Can you speak to that kind of lifestyle choice and how you feel it's changed your philosophy with regards to permaculture?
Yeah, because permaculture very much, a lot of the ideas in permaculture are about getting to know a place and, understanding a place and really becoming part of that place. Yeah. But I was at a point where I was living in the city in Portland, Oregon, and my wife is not really a city girl. She wasn't very happy in the city, and I was really feeling like Portland's great, but it's so green, there's so much sustainability going on there. I felt kind of redundant,
Right.
Like I don't need to be here, I could be somewhere else. And my wife finally pointed out that since I travel for so much of my work, we really didn't need to be anywhere. And the idea of being, we thought of it as nomadic at first, but we really found that it was more migratory. Just was very attractive. And as we started doing this, kind of spending a month or two in one place or another, first outside of national parks because they're gorgeous, but then finding communities we wanted to be in, like Prescott, Arizona was one place, that we really felt like we were connecting up to a deeper pattern in human nature. For far more of human history, we have been migratory.
Right.
Farming is pretty recent comparison to the million years of human beings.
Sure.
So we felt like we were really connecting, particularly in North America, where so many North American First Nations peoples were migratory, at least seasonally migratory, and we actually wound up developing a seasonal migration of one place in the summer, another place for the rest of the year. So it actually felt like I was connecting to something much deeper and older than our culture, current American or North American culture is.
Interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting take on it. I'm sure you've met a lot of really interesting people along your path as well.
It's been really encouraging and positive just seeing how many people are doing fantastic work everywhere, every place we went. Really a positive message. It was nice to see.
So last night you gave a talk on the redesign of civilization, and you spoke a little bit about Custers' last stand and the epiphany that you had when you were standing on his battlefield, or the field in which the battle took place. Can you talk a little bit about how that epiphany has shifted your view and on how permaculture can actually become a new paradigm, or how it can solve the problems that it's almost as though when that battle occurred, humanity shifted in a way, and now from what I heard from you last night, it's like we have to kind of look back at that battle, what happened there, what happened before that battle, and in order to kind of go forward. Maybe can you expand on that a little bit?
Right, sure. We visited the battlefield of the Little Bighorn, which was the place of, it's known as Custer's last stand. And although it's thought of mostly as a place where the native people defeated the U.S. Army, it really was the end of the way of life for the Plains people, the Plains Indians or First Nations people in the Plains, because at that point the U.S. Army brought in lots more troops and really drove all of the Plains people, either exterminated them or drove them into the reservation. It was the end of that migratory way of life. The ranger that we spoke to there really called these people, he said they were the freest people in the world, in the patterns of their movement and the freedoms that they had to live their way of life. And just feeling that, getting what we traded for the security of civilization, the security of being a farming person with the stored up surplus over the winter and that sort of thing, we traded a terrific amount of freedom for that. That a migratory people like the Lakota and the Hunkpapa and the Cheyenne were people who really were the freest people in the world, and so we lost a lot to gain that security of, now we follow a lot more rules. And I sometimes think of things like the American Bill of Rights or the Magna Carta, all of these documents that were giving us rights or protecting our rights. I actually begin to think of those as desperate last measures against the inevitable trend of civilization to take more and more rights away from us and make us less and less free. So this was just the sort of epiphanies that I had there of the freedoms that we really gave up to become safe and secure, supposedly.
And I guess permaculture is kind of, one of the principles is to return function back to the system, and so was that kind of tying into that epiphany that you had, is that we've really got to find a way to get back to that state of being, that freedom?
Right. I think we're extracting so much from the landscape, and we're taking a lot out of ourselves. We really tamed ourselves terrifically, and so bringing, rather than having an extractive culture, a culture of return and regeneration, where we treat nature as something that provides for us rather than something to be defeated and held at bay, and can restore that cycling between human beings and nature rather than that big separation that we have now.
Interesting. I've thought about culture as kind of as humanity's operating system, and there's thousands of cultures. Obviously there's the cultures, a lot of the cultures that we can see around the world are starting to disappear now, and being replaced with this Western culture. Do you feel that permaculture gives us some of the tools that we require to create a new operating system for humanity?
I think that in the long run, permaculture offers a different model. I guess you could call it a different operating system, but permaculture also, one of its tenets is that we begin where we are, and this is where we are. And so I don't think we're talking about kind of what you call a cold reboot, take it all down and build it from scratch, but a gradual morphing from where we are, one step at a time, gently. Doesn't freak a lot of people out to go gently to a new place, but I do think it is, in a way, a new operating system or a transformation to, in some ways, return to things that we've lost from the past, but in other ways, humanity does go forward. We continually develop new ways of doing things, and I don't know what they're going to be, but I think permaculture provides us with a toolkit for those appropriate systems, ways of being in the world.
So one of the messages that I've gotten from you in the last 4 days that I've been able to spend with you is that perhaps growing all your own food or complete self-sufficiency is not necessarily a goal that we should be trying to achieve right away. I mean, it's a stepped approach, and I really resonate with that because it's really hard to try and meet all of your own needs, especially when you're starting from pretty much ground zero. I was hoping you could kind of expand on that point a little bit because I find it fascinating.
Right. I think particularly in North American culture, we have this ideal that the self-sufficient homestead is the great thing, and I can understand why we feel that way, because I think it's because if we're not self-sufficient, we feel like we're contributing to systems that are really very destructive, and we don't have control over them. So the natural impulse is, I'm going to grow all of my own food. But I think what we're really thinking about is, I want to meet my food needs in a sustainable, healthy way. And as soon as you start thinking like that, then yes, you can grow some of your own food, but you can get food from your neighbors, trade with your neighbors, you can support local community-supported agriculture, you can shop at farmers markets, you can find other ways that will provide for your food needs that are in alignment with your values, that aren't just simply going to, I need to be completely self-sufficient, because it's an awful lot of work. And I think what we're really looking for is kind of community self-reliance and regional self-reliance, whatever the appropriate scale for self-reliance is. At some point we're all reliant on everybody else on the whole planet, but for certain of our needs we're reliant on a much smaller area.
Sure.
So it's really appropriate scale and appropriate degree of reliance. Mostly we're looking for habits that create community and that create a healthy life. So we go beyond just the, I want to grow all of my own food, to, I want to make sure I meet these needs in a healthy, sustainable way.
Sure, yeah. I mean, in a way, one kind of leads to community, and one can lead to kind of segregation in a sense. So,
exactly.
So community self-reliance is a much better goal probably than complete independence.
Why would you want to isolate yourself from other people that
Yeah.
way, instead of creating this really strong webwork of interconnections with each other?
Totally. So I know you've been kind of actively in the permaculture movement, teaching, writing books, doing design for almost 20 years now, which is quite a feat. And so, you know, you bring this really interesting perspective because you've watched the movement grow over the last 20 years and probably even a little bit longer than that. And I'm curious with regards to, you know, where the movement is right now, where you see it going in the next 20 or 30 years.
I think I see permaculture becoming, well, in a sense, more mainstream. I think that in traveling around a lot, I've really met a lot of people who seems like everybody feels like things aren't working. Everybody feels like this just isn't working anymore. But everybody has different ideas of what needs to be done, or, you know, it's so-and-so's fault or it's their fault. And what permaculture does is offers a set of solutions to that. And so in a perfect world, or in an ideal world, I would see people turning to permaculture because it is a set of positive solutions. It's not blaming anyone, it's starting where we are and beginning to design and create solutions. So I see permaculture moving into schools and universities much more, into city and regional planning agencies, and just kind of becoming part of the language as we as a culture stop being quite so fragmented and reductionist and really start thinking in whole systems again. And permaculture is a set of tools for thinking those ways. So I just see more and more people adopting it as a solution, turning away from the scary reaction to the future to a really positive, solutions-oriented approach. So
would you say that, you know, the permaculture movement right now is exploding? Is it undergoing an exponential growth phase right now? I think it really is. I think permaculture has gone through a series of kind of growth and then plateau and growth and then plateau. And right now, I don't know where the plateau is going to come from it. That I'm seeing, I used to know a lot of the teachers in permaculture, and now there are students of teachers of students of students of students teaching permaculture, and I've lost track of who they all are, which I think is a great sign. It's become so enormous and is moving into so many different places that no one can keep track of it anymore. It really has kind of gone viral in a very, very positive way. Yeah. Great. Thanks so much, Toby. It's been great having you. We've probably seen close to 300 or 400 people in the last 4 days here in Calgary. I know you've left a lot of people really, really inspired, including us. And it's really awesome that there's this amazing network of people doing earth repair right across the planet. It leaves a really, really great feeling in my heart. If you're interested in learning more about Toby, I highly recommend checking out his book, Gaia's Garden. And Toby writes a blog from time to time, and he's got a fantastic website with lots of really optimistic and positive articles on permaculture. His website's patternliteracy.com. Thanks so much.